Ever dream of just quitting the 9 to 5 and building a life packed with adventure? Well, today, we're diving into the incredible story of Gone with the Winds. They're a couple who actually did it. They traded a massive loft for a catamaran to find total freedom on the open water. It really makes you wonder, right? Could you swap your desk for the deep blue sea? I mean, it sounds like a total fantasy, but for Jason and Nikki Wynn, it wasn't just a dream. It was a reality they were absolutely determined to build for themselves. So their story kicks off with this incredibly bold move, just escaping the rat race. And we're not talking a small change here. They went from a massive 4,000 square foot loft all the way down to a 45-foot catamaran. I mean, that's a decision that completely turns your life upside down. And when you look at the before and after, the scale of this change is just wow. One minute, they're a professional photographer and a makeup artist living this corporate life in a giant loft in Dallas. The next, they're full-time explorers and documentarians. Their home is a sailboat, and their office, well, it's literally the entire planet. You've got to be thinking, how on earth do you make a leap that big? Well, it really boils down to mindset. Nikki put it perfectly. We're simply hardworking entrepreneurs who are not afraid of a little risk. See, this wasn't about having some huge trust fund to fall back on. It was all about being willing to bet on themselves, plain and simple. And what's really interesting is that this whole journey didn't even start on the water. It started on land with a pretty simple idea. They just sold everything, bought a home on wheels, an RV, and made it so that home was wherever they parked it. That one move, that was the springboard for everything else. Okay, but let's get to the question that's probably on everyone's mind. How do you actually pay for all this freedom? You know, having the dream is great, but funding it with no regular paycheck or office, that's a whole other ballgame. And it's no surprise that this is the first question they always get. How can you possibly afford to do that? So let's get into it. Let's break down exactly how they managed to turn this incredible passion for travel into a real sustainable business. All right, so here's the secret sauce: diversification. They didn't put all their eggs in one basket. About half their income comes from their professional skills, doing photo and video work for the travel industry. Then, their website and affiliates bring in another big chunk, about 35%, and the rest comes from freelance writing. They basically just took what they were already good at and figured out how to make money from it on the move. Now, the perks of this setup are, well, pretty amazing. Just imagine it. Every single job takes you to some new, beautiful place. Your work is literally forcing you to get out there and explore. Plus, a lot of your travel costs can become legitimate business write-offs. But you know, for them, the best part, the biggest reward is knowing they're inspiring other people to think about life a little differently. But hold on, it's not all sunsets and cocktails. This lifestyle is definitely not a permanent vacation. The downsides are real. I mean, trying to find any kind of work-life balance is a constant battle. For every amazing photo you see, there are just endless hours parked in front of a computer, editing and writing. And think about it, it's super hard to buckle down and work when everyone around you is on vacation. Oh, and yeah, you still have to deal with the negativity and the online trolls. And this quote really nails their whole philosophy. It wasn't about, hey, can we figure out how to fund this for a year? It was about, how do we find ways to always fund this lifestyle? That's a totally different mindset, right? It's all about constant adaptation, always being ready to reinvent yourselves. So, after years crisscrossing the country in an RV, their adventure took a new turn, leading them right to the ocean. This next chapter, sailing into the future, is where things get really high-tech. Okay, so the heart and soul of their new sailboat is something called a parallel hybrid system. Now, I know that sounds super technical, but the concept is actually pretty clever and simple. All it means is that you have a regular diesel engine and an electric motor hooked up to the same propeller shaft. This gives them a ton of options and backups for how to move the boat. And this system gives them 4 different ways to operate, which is just incredible. You've got your standard diesel mode for long-distance cruising. Then there's silent electric mode for quietly moving around. The engines can also just run as generators to top off the batteries. But here's the coolest part: hydro regeneration. This is where the propellers spin as they sail, actually generating free electricity from the water. So what does that actually look like in real life? Well, it means they can slip out of a quiet anchorage at sunrise in total silence, using just the electric motors. No noisy engine waking everyone up. But when they need to cover some serious distance, they can fire up the diesel, which is not only moving them forward, but also charging up all their systems. It's really the best of both worlds. And just to give you an idea of how much power we're talking about, check out this number, 10 kilowatts. That's how much juice the two engines can pump back into their batteries while they're motoring. They're basically two giant alternators. This setup makes them unbelievably self-sufficient when they're out on the open ocean. But all this amazing tech isn't just for convenience. It serves a much bigger purpose, and that brings us to their traveler's footprint. See, this whole journey isn't just about their personal freedom. It's about how their choices connect to a much bigger global movement. So what's driving this passion? It's seeing the problem with their own eyes every single day. Nikki put it this way: we see a disturbing amount of plastic floating past us every day, and it's almost exclusively single-use stuff. I mean, imagine seeing that constantly. You can see why it would be such a powerful motivator to change how you live. And the thing is, they're not alone in this, not by a long shot. Their whole journey is part of this huge, growing movement towards sustainable sailing. They're plugged into this amazing community of sailors who are all working to protect the oceans that they love and call home. And you can see it in their everyday habits. They're all about minimizing waste, especially single-use plastics. They're super careful with how they handle fuel to avoid spills. They're choosing eco-friendly products for cleaning, and they're always navigating in a way that protects wildlife and the whole marine ecosystem. They're not just talking the talk, they are absolutely walking the walk. When you step back and look at the whole picture, their journey is living proof that you can have a life full of freedom and adventure and have a deep respect for the planet. For them, those two things aren't just compatible, they're completely intertwined. And that kind of brings us to a final, bigger thought. After seeing everything they've done to build this life, maybe we've been asking the wrong question all along. Maybe the real question isn't, how do you fund the journey? But what kind of journey is actually worth funding? Thanks for joining me on this one.